So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Wolverine and Harley Quinn. So let's start the series. The shinobi world having experienced numerous disasters, which the typical shinobi could not have imagined. The typical shinobi even survived the incident, since someone always stepped forward to save everyone. As a result, the three great sage regions witnessed a great deal of the conflict that the shinobi world experienced, the emergence and dissolution of clans, the atrocities that the Uzumaki used their Fuinjutsu to unleash upon the world, the overwhelming power of the Jubi, the power of the Otsutsuki, and even the sealing of an Otsutsuki by her own children. As a result, they had been acutely aware for centuries after the sealing that there were other Otsutsuki besides Kagaya, and that they were actually on the verge of another visit from the genocidal Otsutsuki clan, which all three sage regions had dreaded for one reason or another. Being the sole observer of that battle, the Toad Sage was especially aware that the Sage of the Six Paths and his brother would never have prevailed if it weren't for Kagaya's love for her sons, despite the fact that they were at least on par with their mother in terms of combat strength. The Rinne Sharingan, the most potent Dijutsu ever seen by any being in the shinobi world, however, it is impossible to overstate how versatile it is to be able to take both you and your adversaries to a number of other dimensions with different physics. Under the pretense of informing them of a prophecy concerning the arrival of the Chosen One to save them, he had been sending all of his summoners on the quest to produce or nurture various strong shinobi. He never once thought that doing so would cause his rambling to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. With the use of a self-fulfilling prophecy, someone was created who could reverse the tide against someone even the sage would lose to. The development of Naruto Uzumaki, the shinobi world's second strongest member, seeing young Uzumaki and young Sasuke had finally given him hope that the shinobi world could be saved or at least protected from the otherworldly Otsutsuki that would surely visit them soon, especially once they discover why Kagaya vanished and was subsequently sealed inside the moon. He had witnessed the young Uzumaki turn the tide against overwhelming odds numerous times. Naturally, that optimism was quickly dashed when Ishiki Otsutsuki showed himself to be even more powerful than they had anticipated. He had assumed that since Ishiki was weaker than Kagaya, young Naruto would be able to win easily, but it turned out that only someone like Hashirama Senju could defeat an Otsutsuki without actually being an Otsutsuki. Therefore, he had been watching young Naruto's battle with sadness when, suddenly, he appeared in a form that had never been seen before. He watched incredulously as young Naruto completely abused Ishiki as though he were a Kage and Ishiki were only a Jonin, using the limited clairvoyance that was bestowed upon him by his very own sage mode. His expectations increased with each strike that young Naruto deflected and each blow that Ishiki took, until at the last second, with a ferocious punch, Naruto knocked Ishiki to the ground, apparently permanently. Boruto and young Sasuke hailed Naruto's triumph over Ishiki, which only a few minutes before appeared unattainable. He also sighed with relief when he realized that Ishiki would soon run out of time, and that they would win even if Naruto didn't put in any more effort. He had planned to question Naruto about the unexpected power boost that had given him the ability to defeat Ishiki, but the cloak of power that had even made his senses tingle from this distance vanished, and Naruto's eyes rolled back in their sockets as he fell to the ground, unconscious and gasping for air. He tried to check his Jinchuriki seal as his eyes opened greatly at the finding, but his brows wrinkled in concern as he saw that Naruto's chakra was all right, although a touch exhausted, but that was given after a struggle of this scale. The Kyuubi's chakra was seeping out of the seal as it had widened. But rather than letting it emerge from his prison, it was vanishing into thin air, never to be seen again. When he realized what the Kyuubi and young Naruto had done, he collapsed in resignation, appearing to age even more. The Kyuubi had accomplished something that was believed to be impossible in some way. The real Bijou death. Is it true that one of the Bijou, who are basically creations of chakra, sacrifices themselves to power someone else only when the Jubi is used? Unimaginable. However, that was the only explanation for what he could observe. Kurama had given his life to ensure Ishiki's downfall, but the Kuno, since his chakra levels were returning to normal, Naruto was somehow spared, but he was no longer a Jinchuriki. So, this approach was also unsuccessful? After this encounter, he was no closer to figuring out how to defeat those annoying Atsutsukis. He observed Ishiki straining to stand on two legs that were already collapsing because of his waning karma, just as he was ready to leave his sage mode because it was taking a significant toll on his aging body. Even though Ishiki was on the verge of death, he somehow got a bad feeling about the scenario. Nevertheless, he was powerless to warn them, so he could only watch in horror as Ishiki seemed to drain all of his energy and focus it in his right eye. Immediately following their battle with Ishiki, Naruto and Kurama were seen conversing in the Jinchuriki seal's shared mental region. Knowing that he was going to die a real death, Kurama was thinking back on all of the times he had spent with Naruto, things that his former self could never have imagined. Indeed, the idea of forming a link with one of the damned ninjas who twisted his father's teachings would have made his former self flinch. Unfortunately, the Toad Sage's prediction came to pass. He had always believed that he had become senile due to his advanced age because he would constantly ramble on about the Chosen One who would eventually come to bring the shinobi world together and defend it from an alien threat. But as it happened, Naruto did come into the world and they did encounter not one but two alien threats in the form of the annoying Atsutsukis. Even today, defeating Ishiki alone required the combined strength of Naruto and himself. He was aware that the Otsutsuki would return, if not sooner rather than later, but he would not be present to help Naruto defeat them. However, it was for later. At the moment, after they had finished remembering the good old days, he murmured, "This is farewell, Naruto." But he would never tell Naruto this. When a tailed beast is taken out of a Jinchuriki, the Jinchuriki dies, but that is not the case right now, Naruto said curiously. When Naruto realized what Kurama was discussing, his eyes gradually widened in terror. No, all that will happen now is my chakra will disappear, me along with it. No, the price was my life and not yours, Naruto. Wait a minute. As Kurama's chakra eventually started to leak out of the seal, his form gradually started to smoke. At his frightened expression, "Don't look at me with that annoying gaze, Sai. Just be careful. You won't have the same superhuman strength and chakra now, so be careful or you'll just join me sooner than expected. It's almost time. I won't be here for long, Kurama stopped in the middle of his statement because he could feel something going on outside, but he couldn't utilize Naruto's senses to determine what was going on because his entire body was nearly shut down from the stress of Baryon mode. Nevertheless, he got a negative premonition, but before he could alert Naruto to it, their entire mental environment shook as though they had been tossed aside. Kurama! It would appear that he had even less time than he had anticipated. "Shut up, I'm trying to do something here," Kurama said, flinching as the strain of simply releasing chakra to shock Naruto's senses into becoming alert was felt. A kind of energy that he had only ever felt once in his life instantly ate up the chakra he had released. Energy in the void. Something so hazardous that even the Otsutsuki were hesitant to go between universes was the energy that pervaded the gap between several realities. He recalled that the only way humans could repel void energy was to become accustomed to it. Regretfully, no mortal had ever become accustomed to void energy. He chose to do everything in his power to help Naruto recuperate by returning all of his little remaining chakra to him, wincing inwardly. Naruto became alert in the mental space, sensing a surge in his chakra. Kurama? What is happening? He asked. Kurama's enormous head returned to the mindscape. Listen here, Naruto, something has gone terribly wrong. Somehow, Ishiki must have done something to transport you out of our universe. Now, you are in the void between universes, and the only way to survive this is to use chakra, more and more chakra, so that the disintegrating effects of void energy can be resisted. As Naruto realized what Kurama was discussing, his expression became serious. Kurama, the Nine Tails, the oldest of the Bijou, vanished after saying, "I'll be leaving now, Naruto, but be careful." Desperate, Naruto sank to his knees and yelled, "Kurama!" After wiping away his tears, Naruto was ready to get to his feet when his whole body froze, the void energy corrosion finally affecting his chakra system. A red cloak was visible outside Naruto's body, encircling his body. The cloak was gradually being weakened by the flood of void energy that filled the room they were in. The good news was that the cloak was allowing void energy to enter Naruto's chakra system selectively. The damage that resulted from the exposure to void energy was quickly repaired by Naruto's lightning-fast healing abilities. However, until that damage was repaired, the cloak ceased allowing void energy to enter, and the cycle was repeated. This continued until the crimson cloak gradually faded to nearly nothing. As like it had a consciousness of its own, it moved back to shield Naruto's head and torso, two vital bodily parts. The surrounding void energy destroyed Naruto's chakra system without Kurama's chakra to protect him. Luckily, because of the prior controlled exposure, the damage was not irreparable before Naruto was pushed out of the void stream and straight into a trash can without anyone noticing. Naruto's body and mind had shut down before he could hit the trash due to the strain of universal travel, but his chakra system, which had partially adapted to void energy, was in overdrive as it attempted to absorb chakra from the environment in order to replenish Naruto's depleted chakra levels and heal the void burns that had occurred on his body. Unfortunately, there was no chakra in the world where he had crashed. As a result, Naruto's chakra system quickly realized its error and started looking for the most appropriate energy system available. It discovered the ambient dimensional energy that permeated every reality in that multiverse cluster. Naruto's chakra system devoured the ambient dimensional energy like a hungry beast, only to discover that, in contrast to chakra, dimensional energy can only flow through someone, powering objects. In other words, the dimensional energy that ought to have been saved before use was now being utilized instead. It was utilized to accelerate Naruto's natural healing abilities after first clearing the system of any leftover void energy. The burns from being exposed to void energy started to scab over and heal gradually. At that moment, two sets of footsteps reverberated in the small lane where Naruto had crashed, accompanied by the whooshing sound of air being displaced. Before someone snapped their fingers, a platform composed of golden lines of spatial energy emerged just beneath Naruto, lifting him out from the piles of debris he was beneath. My, you truly are a long way from home," one of the voices said. As they both backed away from the alley through a golden gateway that had appeared in front of them, a second voice asked, "Are you sure this is the right decision?" Another person entered the scene just as the portal closed, and upon realizing that the alley was deserted, they cast a spell that smelled strongly of purple darkness. Damn it! I was too late! She swore aloud as she froze upon witnessing the findings. Ah, so nice of you to join us here. When the Ancient One's figure appeared, Agatha Harkness froze. She attempted to attack the Ancient One with a spell, but her body ignored her as though she were imprisoned. I wouldn't be doing that if I were you. I sure hope you remember the pact and the consequences of breaking it, the Ancient One stated as he approached her with cool, collected steps. The thought of that damned agreement, and the obvious indifference to the danger she posed to the Ancient One made her clench her teeth. The Ancient One arrived shortly after and stopped. And if you came here in search of someone, that person is under my protection and will soon become a member of Kamar Taj. While I understand that someone with his capabilities would allow you in particular to reach heights that you could only dream of, I can't allow that, so goodbye, the Ancient One then said. I hope, for your sake, that our paths don't cross for a long time after today. Before passing her and entering the portal she had opened. She didn't regain control over her body until the portal closed. Oh no, that woman's power over time, centuries old, which Agatha Harkness had used her limited precognitive abilities to predict the location of a person who would arrive completely vulnerable, and who would be perfectly compatible with her abilities to absorb the magic and vitality of people and turn that into her own strength. The reason for her frustration was that, even by standing close to the Ancient One, she could sense the sheer vitality emanating from her, which was not hers because she knew the methods the Ancient One had used to extend her life, which she was unwilling to use. She shuddered as the enticing scent of the delicious vitality in the area simply taunted her for not finding someone who would have allowed her to live for millennia. She yelled in wrath, shattering everything around her in a flaming fire, while breathing heavily and having purple flashes in her eyes. She turned on her heels and vanished from the alley, breathing heavily, leaving the neighborhood burning in a fire that would not go out all night. The locals were not informed of the sequence of events that had taken place there. Kathmandu's Kamar Taj, 2003. The prone form of one Naruto Uzumaki was seen resting on a glowing bed in a ritually enhanced chamber at Kamar Taj. The bed was a convenient new invention made possible by the creation of the nitramine that emitted Vita rays, or chi as it is known in the supernatural community. The literal life energy, or chi, was what was doubling Naruto's rate of natural healing. The Ancient One was seated close by, holding a typical leisure book, while Naruto's steady breathing played in the background. Naruto remained asleep despite not having any more obvious wounds, primarily as a result of the shock he had endured during his inter-universal journey. As his body was being restored to its optimal state, Naruto was gradually regaining consciousness. WH-*****. Naruto sat up straight, coughing. His throat had dried up after his multiversal journey. After snapping her fingers, the Ancient One sent a glass of water floating in Naruto's direction. Naruto managed to mutter, "Thank you," in between coughing. He emptied the glass of water, sat down, and asked the Ancient One, "Where am I?" with lifeless eyes. The Ancient One arched her brows at Naruto's careless response despite waking up with a stranger in an unfamiliar setting. "You are remarkably calm for someone who essentially just lost his entire life." Although her blunt remarks may have come across as nasty to some, they were the truth, something that was lacking in her area of work. Yeah, I guess you could say that," Naruto said with a sour laugh. "So, where do we go from here?" "I don't know. Your body, as it is now, won't be able to sustain the full powers you will eventually gain once your systems are back up and running on dimensional energy. You are a 1 in a trillion anomaly. It was as if your entire life was planned by someone to culminate in a body that could handle anything the multiverse could throw at it. After the introductions were completed and he had finally questioned her about his strange circumstances, the Ancient One's explanation flew completely over Naruto's head. But he did understand one thing. His body was hurt, but it will recover quickly, as it always has. What use is that to me now? He laughed as he heard the portion about his healing abilities. What use is being powerful if I can't even protect the people I love? He asked her, his eyes full of unshed tears. During her explanation, the Ancient One paused and sighed. He heard her snap her fingers, and then they were in a different location. He was unable to determine whether he was in a genjutsu or whether they had truly transported him to a farm without his knowledge. He had checked, but it was impossible to verify or dispel the illusion without his chakra system being completely disrupted. Even attempting to perform any internal energy-related task sent shivers of pain up his spine so severe that he didn't bother after the first unsuccessful attempt. His vision allowed him to identify the elderly couple eating dinner outside their home, and the way they conversed and laughed would have been nearly impossible for anyone back home to duplicate, save for Madara and possibly Itachi. He surveyed the area where they had landed. The grass felt real to his toes, and the sensation of air against his skin was unmistakable. When he realized she wouldn't be giving him an explanation on her own, he asked her, Where are we, Ancient One? This is a retirement home of an upstanding couple. They worked hard all their lives and deserve all the peaceful retirement period they are in. Unfortunately, their happy retirement years will be cut short when they find themselves becoming a victim of a break-in that would go wrong a few short weeks from now. When she gently dropped the bomb on him, there was no stuttering or intonation, and the next thing she said sent shivers down his spine. As she nonchalantly revealed the future to him, he whipped his neck in her direction, his eyes bursting incredulously. What are you saying? Can you see the future? The Ancient One gave a nod and began to move in the direction of the distant house, jogging a little to catch up to her. In a manner of speaking, I can see possible futures. Unfortunately, in most of the futures I can see, the lovely couple unfortunately does die a rather violent death. As the ramifications of the Ancient One's abilities started to sink in, his body froze and his stride paused in the middle. As the Ancient One continued to move in the direction of the home, he attempted to seize her by the shoulder in an attempt to halt her and finally draw her attention to him, but his hand moved through her body as though she were a water clone rather than a real person. At that moment, everything in front of him transformed, and he was back where he had been before the whole mess started. He looked at the woman sitting in front of him casually, and realized the full extent of her abilities, and how easily she could kill him. He blinked the spots out of his vision, jumped, and looked over his entire body and surroundings to make sure he had not moved an inch from his previous position. However, he then realized that he had nothing left to lose and that if she had wanted him dead, he would have died. Given his current state, he would not have been able to fight back in any way. So why show me that illusion? He asked as he sank back down on his bed. The Ancient One got up from her chair and moved toward the window. He was, for some reason, residing in Kamar Taj's tallest tower, and from the window by his bed, he could observe everyone using the ninjutsu that the Ancient One referred to as magic. The Ancient One stood behind her, observing the apprentices practicing their conjuration, and said, Because it is true, I have seen their fate and it is not pretty. Without someone to stop the would-be thieves, that couple is fated to die, he said. He raised his eyebrows and replied, What do you mean by fated to die? There is no such thing, and if you do know what is about to happen to them, why don't you save them all by yourself? And the biggest question of them all, why me? What have I done to deserve all this? I was happy back home. I am literally stuck here with no way out and no purpose, so, for the love of Kami himself, tell me why, show me that. Exactly. A purpose is something that can make or break a man. In your case, you are already broken, so maybe a purpose can help you in this reality. The Ancient One remarked, staring at him with lifeless eyes. Then she turned to face the bed and snapped her fingers, which accompanied the sound of his clothing being changed and being carried to a different room. Stop doing that! Once more, he found himself in an entirely new room with strange objects housed in glass containers. He raised his eyebrows and said, as if he could feel something calling out to him. It felt like he was feeling chakra, but this time it was really hazy. Hello? He said, scanning the area for someone who might be able to help him go, but he was unable to see a single window or door. His senses were handicapped, so he had nothing better to do than glance around the glass containers to discover what was causing them to tingle. He continued to wander the hallway in the strange-looking but oddly comfortable clothes in search of that elusive feeling, but it soon became clear that he was standing in front of a glass box that contained an hourglass filled with glowing purple sand. The hourglass continued to rotate slowly in the air as the sand tumbled from one end to the other, without really filling any side. It turned out that the location he was in was actually a large corridor with swaths of items lining the center of the room in display behind protective glass shields. His hand slowly extended toward the glass container, mesmerized by the glow, and without his knowledge, it passed through the hole that had formed in the glass as soon as it approached it. This should have caused him to become alarmed, but at that precise moment, all he could think about was how lovely the purple glow was and how it could resolve all of his issues. He felt the energy emanating from the hourglass as it approached him, invigorating him. His hand was about to touch the hourglass when the glass hole closed, and the force used nearly tore it in two. Arg! He muttered in pain, and as though he had just woken up from a daze, he glanced around, unsure of what had happened. I would not do that if I were you, the infernal Ancient One said as a delicate hand settled on his shoulder and deftly drew him away from the hourglass. His hand was released from the glass hole, which then closed as though it had never been there in the first place. He attempted to release the full force of his chakra but failed, as seen by the small stream of blood that came out of his mouth. Okay, this has gone on long enough. Either you give me some answers or let me leave because I am just about done with your games, woman, he muttered. He removed it and heard her say, Look, as I said, you are an anomaly. What I said back then, about my abilities, was not untrue. I can see possible futures, and through those, I can mostly predict how the future would go based on a certain action. You, on the other hand, do not appear in my visions. It was as if the rules of the world did not apply to you at all. That was the case when you first arrived here. Now, as if the reality was adjusting to your presence, I can see your silhouette in my visions, but I still can't find anything concrete regarding you. She must have been swayed by his bewildered expression because she began simplifying it for him. It turned out that he wasn't intended to be here at all, at least not according to the Ancient One's future reading abilities. Her abilities didn't work on him when he initially came here, but after a few days of him being in their universe, they started to work on him as well. At least that's what he took away from the Ancient One's drawn-out explanation. Wait, if that's the reason, then why did you show me that couple and tell me about their deaths? You would not understand right now, but know that couple is very integral to your stay here. Even if you don't believe me, I believe you would still help them out of your own goodness of the heart. Why me? Why can't you help them if you are that powerful? Certain limitations bind me, and interfering in mortal lives with no connection to the supernatural at all is one such covenant that I have to live by. Okay, I will go and save that couple. How will I do that, though? I have no identity or resources to complete my mission. I was of the opinion that people in your line of work were trained for exactly this sort of thing. Not exactly this, but yeah, I have some training in that regard. Very well, I will do as you say, but one last question. What was that hourglass in the glass container, and why did it call out to me? Why couldn't I resist its temptation? The answer to that is complicated. Those are the sands of power cosmic, an unimaginably powerful source of energy that can, under the right circumstances, mimic almost all types of energy save for cosmic energy. His eyes widened in understanding. Yes, that must include chakra as well, the special energy mixture that your body is used to. I reckon that is the reason why your body was attracted to it, since it must crave chakra, and since this reality has none, it gravitated towards one of the few things that can provide that to you. I see, he remarked, examining the hourglass curiously. Unfortunately, your body and especially your internal energy system are all very wrecked right now. I did all I could, but it would seem that the last part would take time to heal naturally. So, I would advise you to avoid trying to use any of your energy skills for at least a few months. The sands of the power cosmic will be handed over to you once you are healed. Until then, they will be under my safekeeping. Even in this new reality, he had no problem with it because it would make his life much easier as long as it allowed him to regain some of his former skills. When he realized he would not be able to employ shadow clones, even for non-combat uses like expedited intelligence collection, he depressed himself and sighed. Now, is there anything else you wanted to ask me? With only the clothes on his back and a small suitcase by his legs, he found himself at the edge of the road that led directly to the house he had seen in the vision. Actually, yes. He wanted to ask her if she could give him a background, but he heard that damned snapping sound once more. He gazed at the orange suitcase once again with a grunt as he palmed his eyes. The Ancient One could at least appreciate that much because he had style. He remarked, "I guess this is it then, no point dilly-dallying now," as he picked up the luggage and made his way carefully in the direction of the house he could make out beyond. It's time to see where he goes with this new reality. The Davis farmhouse, tucked away in Westchester County's undulating hills, was a shining example of comfortable and sustainable living. Richard and Dorothy Davis, who are now retired, spent their days working on their own farm using their own ideas, with no one telling them what to do or when. The independence that comes with having a farmhouse was what they loved most about their farm. Richard had always desired a farm with a barn where he could store all of his farming materials and use them like a true farmer, not for financial gain but rather to fulfill his labor. He believed that the capacity to get mental and bodily fulfillment from the results of one's own labor was something that was disappearing from society as a whole. Naturally, Dorothy occasionally worried more about the farm animals than her own husband, but this was all in good humor. The devoted couple allowed each other the space they needed to complete their tasks, but at the end of the day, they both came to the same house to share their days for amusement. The ordinary person might conclude that Richard and Dorothy had boring lives because they didn't have children, but that couldn't have been further from the reality. Richard, a former high-ranking investment banker, made enough money in his lifetime to support several generations of high-profile living, but he persisted in doing so because he enjoyed doing math. Even now, Richard accounts for and sells the excess produce they have above market value. After receiving a fat bonus check that would allow him to retire, he seized the chance to purchase a sizable plot of land in Westchester County, where his father used to work, on the apple orchards. He had always wanted to own an apple orchard, and he finally succeeded with his own hands. It was challenging, to be sure, but after 7 years of tireless labor, he was now the proud owner of an apple orchard, something he was certain his father would have been extremely pleased of. Since their marriage was arranged because Richard was only interested in his career at the time, the balance of their marriage was extremely unbalanced, at least in the beginning. In contrast, Dorothy had an equally brilliant but far less lucrative career of her own. Richard would work long hours, and she would spend the day taking care of the house and hanging out with the neighborhood wives. That is, until her mother-in-law suggested that she pursue a career in helping others. Sure, it was a very unappreciated job overall, and it paid very little, but she felt it was still far better than sitting at home or pretending to laugh at the same jokes that the neighborhood wives group made. She then started working as a social worker. Over the years, she developed a wide network of contacts with influential people in their fields, people who have helped her in one way or another. This ensured that she would be able to solve a case more or less easily if it came to her. However, over the years, as was typical in her profession, she had encountered numerous examples of individuals she would be reluctant to refer to as human beings. They were scum of the worst kind, above all criminality. She had witnessed human trafficking, drug trafficking, organ trafficking, organized crime, and she had contributed to their incarceration. Being at the forefront of a case that resulted in the conviction of several government officials and the indictment of a sitting senator would be the high point of her career. She was gently pushed away from a career as a social worker for this and a number of other reasons, and she was advised to focus solely on animal welfare. Since it was a different time period and the advice had come from a high position, she did not hesitate much and entered the field of animal care. Naturally, she took great satisfaction in her ability to be a pain in the ass for superiors in any field. As a result, when age finally caught up with her and at Richard's insistence, she made the decision to leave the active scene, and to be honest, things have improved significantly since. Naturally, no one could keep her away from her animals, so Richard had set aside a sizable section of their farm for them, and she was overjoyed. It was a dream come true for her to be able to wake up and see all of her favorite rescues and cattle relaxing on her farm. These days, she only assisted with farm chores and ensured that her animals were being well cared for by their caregivers. This was the life of the retired Davis couple in Westchester County. They had a few friends from their industry days and were very close to their neighbors, but because of the nature of their jobs, they could only be described as work acquaintances. That was essentially Richard and Dorothy's daily pattern, which had remained unbroken for years at this point. The existence of a lost otherworlder named Naruto Uzumaki was set to significantly disrupt that program. Being the ninja anomaly that he was, Naruto had made the decision to simply ring the retired couple's front door in order to address the issue directly. The Davis couple made a significant investment to ensure that their home was as safe from intruders as possible, and they had a number of alarms that would sound at the first sign of an intrusion into their haven, despite the fact that they lived simply and had almost no security guards aside from the farm workers. These were the benefits that could be obtained with financial strength and a small amount of industry ties. However, the reality was that the Davis couple's implemented security measures all evoked a certain vision of an invader. The security engineers had never anticipated that someone would simply approach the front door and ask the residents, But that is exactly what happened when Naruto rang the doorbell. All security systems registered him as a regular passerby rather than the freeloader he was about to become. A cunning, suspicious person attempting to gain entry by either brute forcing the most obvious entry point, the doors or the windows, or trying to gain access to the farms by avoiding the boundaries. The Davis couple inside was staring at their intercom screen, unsure of who it was, as Naruto stood there in his orange outfit with his orange suitcase, grinning directly at the door. Then the intercom spoke. Hello? Richard's bewildered voice could be heard. After realizing his error, Naruto took a step back and bowed slightly towards the intercom, saying, Hello? My name is Uzumaki Naruto, and I would like to work here, please. After initially being surprised by the source of the sound. As they sat in their living room, Davis said, So let me get this straight. You have somehow lost all your identification papers and are stuck in the United States for the foreseeable future? Somehow, and I will need some proper explanation as to how. You heard about our farm and wanted to work for us here. Does this not seem a little odd to you, or is that even your real name? Dorothy had decided, following her instincts, to invite Naruto inside and at least offer him a cup of tea before sending him on his way. The questions caused Naruto to blush. To be honest, that is all I know. I don't have any identification on me that will work in this country, and whatever I own is in the suitcase, please. I have heard of the horror stories that happen to the homeless in this country, and I don't wish for that to happen to me or anyone. I can assure you that I can and will work hard, and you don't even need to pay for my work. Just food and stay will more than suffice. He prayed for them to grant his request while bowing his head and clasping his palms together. Naruto, was it? Why don't you give us both a moment of privacy and we'll let you know our answer then? Dorothy suggested, placing a hand on Richard's leg as he was ready to decline. Naruto nodded, feeling somewhat relieved by Dorothy's warm smile. He then left the living room and shut the door behind him. As he stood in front of the front door, he could hear them discussing how he looked and how he was too good-looking to be homeless, or something similar. In one instance, he was unable to comprehend half of what was being said in the room, yet they were discussing him. Sometimes, his increased senses caused him more trouble than they were worth. Come in, Naruto. He grinned when he heard Dorothy call out to him. Yes? He asked, opening the door and sticking his head through it. Dorothy grinned despite her surprise at his appearance and said, Yes, you can start working for us, but we do have some terms and conditions. He winced inside as his vocal tic reverted to his typical speech pattern in enthusiasm. I will follow everything you say, believe it, he said. Even though he had no idea what was in the bag other than the fact that it was abnormally light, he sat down on the sofa with his luggage innocently to the side. So, first things first, no drinking, no drugs, you get me? Young people like you should focus on their work first, agreed, but those things didn't work on him anyway. His improved metabolism consumed any drug or alcohol in a matter of seconds, leaving him completely sober at the end of the experience. Regretfully, he had been the target of numerous drugging attempts during his tenure as Hokage, including from members of the village, but each time they failed because his body completely adjusted to them after each attempt and after all the things he had experienced and the poisons to which he had become immune in the land of fire itself. He didn't think this world possessed anything that could help him go asleep, but if it did, it would greatly lessen the daily nightmares he experienced. Secondly, you will live in the workers' quarters. The building is not far behind. You can see it from the backyard. Remember, the work will be heavy, but we do not condone unpaid labor here, and hence, after the first 2 weeks, We will evaluate your performance, and you will receive your salary, Richard remarked. What? You thought we were a bunch of old white people who would exploit unfortunate immigrants? Well, I, for one, believe in the quality of work you do, not a piece of paper or the color of your skin. And he nodded, clearly appreciative. He grinned and said, Understood, to Richard. Dorothy's eyes sparkled as she gazed at them, and Richard's smile made him appear utterly uneasy. And last of all, no stealing. If you need something, be frank and tell us, but don't try to pull wool over our eyes. We have not become old simply by sitting around, he responded. Wouldn't dream of it. And repeatedly nodded his head in a chicken-like manner. All right, I am sure you must be tired because of your journey. Let me fix you up a meal while Richard shows you the way to your new home. I hope you like it because we have put a lot of thought into that building, Dorothy stated as she headed for the kitchen. Following Richard through their backyard toward the building, he was able to see youngsters playing in the jungle gym that was set up in front of the building in the distance thanks to his improved vision. Excited about the new chapter in his life and resolved to ensure that nothing happened to them, he heaved his suitcase over his shoulder and trailed behind the quiet and pensive Richard. Since they seemed like decent people, protecting them was the least he could do. Furthermore, he was able to sense the strong natural energy in the area, which would be very beneficial to him after his chakra channels were restored. He could then use his sage mode to further assist them. Additionally, even if the enemy was on par with a Kage, he wouldn't have to worry about anyone harming the elderly couple because to his sage mode. After all, even though he didn't enjoy boasting about it, he wasn't called the Super Kage back home for nothing. He was more than capable of conquering every other Kage by himself, even without Kurama. His and Sasuke's physical differences and possession of the sage's chakra were what distinguished them from the other Kages. Naruto had not anticipated this when he was first informed about the workers' quarters where he would be living. A 3-story building with a lovely cement road leading to the main road and a parking area on the right side of the building stood in front of him. A small garden and a jungle gym were located directly in front of the building, where 4 children were playing. The majority of the children were too young to work, but they were old enough to be trusted to play in a safe environment with little supervision. They are the workers' kids, Richard said, jolting him out of his reverie. Most of the people who work here have families, and while we do pay more than the market average, it is nothing to write home about, so we take care of the kids as a bonus. Surprised, he turned to face Richard. Naruto had attempted to accomplish the same thing with the orphanages back home, but the village never had the extra money needed to support that endeavor, particularly after he was appointed Hokage and mediated peace in the elemental nations. Although he would never want anyone to experience the agony of war, it was indisputable that war was the time period in which shinobis made the most money. It was also true that shinobis suffered the most losses during times of war. He remarked, "That's a nice thing to do, sir," as he inspected the gym located on the complex's ground floor. After saying, "I consider it my duty," and observing that no grown-ups were there, Richard chose to show him to his quarters alone as well. He was a little taken aback when they reached the terrace instead of waiting on the top floor after ascending 3 flights of stairs. He asked in bewilderment as he held the door open for Naruto to pass through. As he showed Naruto his living quarters, Richard stated, "Since we had no plans to expand the farm, we had a pretty clear-cut labor force in mind, so I'm sorry, but until we figure out what to do with you, in the long term, you are going to have to stay up here." Strangely enough, even after 10 years of leaving that location, the space in front of him brought back memories of the dilapidated flat where he grew up. On the plus side, though, the one-room flat in front of him wasn't quite as lonely or forlorn as the one he had previously occupied. "You have a lot of work ahead of you, young man. Cleaning supplies are in the basement. Good luck," Richard said, giving him a shoulder clap. For what reason did he think Richard's "good luck" sounded a little cocky? He drew a big breath and exhaled as the sound of Richard's footsteps faded away, completely bewildered by the recent turn of events in his life. It wasn't shocking at all to go from being a kage to having to clean your own small flat. Do you see his irony? He rolled his sleeves, put his bag next to the door, and ran downstairs to find the cleaning goods. He even went past Richard, who appeared surprised at the rapid pace he had expected to organize his living space. Finding the basement wasn't difficult, but deciding which cleaning supplies to use for the task upstairs was much more difficult because there were several items he had never seen before. Ultimately, the tried and true method prevailed, and he decided to use a mop, broom, and rag to clean some hard surfaces. Resolved, he set to work transforming the space into his own. He was lying on the makeshift bed that Richard had given him when he arrived with Dorothy to check on him in the evening. They were quite shocked by the state of his living quarters because there was a noticeable difference between day and night. Dorothy in particular could not stop talking to him about the jobs she would be assigning him. To be honest, he wasn't especially looking forward to cleaning the horse stables. But a job was a job, and since he had promised to do it, he would complete it without any issues. In any case, he could see Richard pitying him when the stables were brought up, but he was fairly certain that the work was not too bad. Additionally, they gave him dinner, for which he was quite appreciative because he hadn't eaten since the morning. But he was too embarrassed to ask for food because he hadn't done a single task since he had invaded their lives. Even though he was injured, his body was more than capable of working for weeks at a time without feeling the slightest bit tired, and that was without the enhancement of chakra aiding him. There was a reason his body was his greatest weapon instead of his chakra or his sage mode, which can be taken away in certain circumstances. But his body and its natural strength cannot be taken away by anything. He was fairly certain that Dorothy would call for him very early in the morning, and he should have been asleep by now for that, but he simply could not sleep. Nor curses or seals, nor magic, as the Ancient One referred to it. He grumbled and sat up because he couldn't sleep and had nothing better to do. He exhaled and concentrated on his breathing as he was in a cross-legged meditation position. He had been experiencing nightmares ever since he arrived here. He had nightmares about White Cetus taking over his house once the next group of Otsutsuki arrived to look into Kagaya and Ishiki's quiet. He could see Sasuke's corpse and all of his friends. He smacked himself and woke up from his nightmare before he could see anyone else he loved dead. The clock on the wall showed that it had been almost 2 hours since he had been in meditation, or more precisely, that nightmare trance, as he collapsed back onto the bed, his heart racing and his whole body drenched in perspiration. He got up and started taking off his clothing out of frustration. After putting on his tracksuit and running shoes, he left the workers' quarters and started jogging along the road that led to the living area. The fact that the track was circular helped, but he continued running until the sun rose. After finishing a final lap, he felt much better and more composed, and he went to his small apartment to freshen up. He was then prepared to face the day with newfound vigor and excitement, even if some of it was forced because it was difficult to shake off what he had gone through the night before. The Ancient One was closely monitoring the newest, and perhaps most significantly, the most powerful intruder their world had encountered in the millennia she had been alive in the mirror plane. Perhaps the most divisive individual to have entered their universe and lived to tell the story was Naruto Uzumaki, whose entire demeanor was centered on assisting others and embracing them as members of his family. A family that he would sacrifice anything for, that he would go above and above. Nothing could prevent him from attempting to return to his family in the event that he learned that they were in danger. He might even unintentionally destroy their universe in an attempt to reach his home. The voice of an old ally and irritant could be heard directly behind her. Or he could build another family here? Become the guardian of this reality, then you'll finally get the retirement you deserve, she said. The only thing that kept her from controlling her instincts and preventing herself from casting a spell of complete disintegration from which not even she could have survived was centuries of experience dealing with her. As the image of Frigga, dressed in her royal regalia, emerged through a portal into the mirror dimension, the Ancient One sighed and turned around, raising an eyebrow. The Ancient One remarked, "Figured that out, did you?" after observing that Frigga's fingers were devoid of a sling ring. As she used only one finger to cast a spell that opened a portal to an unknown place, Frigga exclaimed, "Oh, this! Did I just solve a problem that had been plaguing your order ever since it was built?" "I did. You know I love challenges, Yao, and this was a fun one." "So, what are we looking at here?" "Your newest boy toy." "No, Queen Frigga, that is Naruto Uzumaki, someone who has undoubtedly been on Heimdall's vision ever since he arrived in this universe," she said, finding the deliberately provocative and unpleasant statements to be nothing more than slightly annoying. I did hear my husband talking about it, but I have no idea about the specifics. Walk me through them, will you?" He is an anomaly that has become used to the void energy that circulates around our multiverse. He is one of the few people recorded to have survived the void energy storm outside of our multiverse and come here. I bet he is the only one that came out unscathed then. Physically as well as mentally? Though that mental part seems slightly debatable now. He is a work in progress. I have put him here because this is the best path for him to progress on, and if, by any chance, it doesn't work out, I am in the ideal conditions to eliminate him without him even reacting to it. Cole, but in our profession, we have to be. Anyway, it's been nice chatting with you. Please come to Asgard soon. I would at least like the honor of being the only sitting queen of Asgard to host the strongest sorcerer supreme since the time of Agamotto himself, especially since your death draws near and you refuse to do anything about it, after saying, "Okay, that's enough out of you." The Ancient One snapped her fingers, and Frigga left the mirror dimension. Even though she was a strategic mastermind and a magical genius, that woman could be so draining at times. He was fairly certain that Odin himself had sent her here, but her interactions with the Asgardian royal family had never been simple. Now, for some reason, she had to travel to Asgard without even having someone to take over. It would appear that she needs to speed up her mending process because the Vishanti would not pardon her if something were to happen to Earth while she was absent. Back in the elemental nations, a gateway had sprung up behind Naruto, and he had been drawn straight into it before doing something that none of the other people there had anticipated. Boruto and Sasuke had discovered the attack on Naruto too late. Naruto appeared to have lost consciousness due to the attack, but just before he was drawn into the vortex, the Six Paths golden chakra flooded him once more, causing his entire body to flicker. Both Boruto and Sasuke were filled with hope because they believed Naruto had recovered his Senjutsu chakra and was now in sage mode. They were partially correct in their assumption, though. In a desperate attempt to save Naruto, Kurama, who had sensed the attack on them, used his incredible control over Naruto's body that he had developed over the years. Of course, this was done with Naruto's consent. Kurama, using the enhanced senses that came with the 6 pads Sage mode, realized in a split second that there was no way Naruto was going to escape the suction force of the portal attack. With him on the verge of withering away, he did the only thing he could think of at the time that would aid the idiot's village. Sasuke saw Naruto's arm aim straight toward his face at the last second, and as he blinked, a fist-sized orb of golden energy became trapped in his face. Before he could avoid it, he felt as though millions of tiny ants were eating his eye socket. He fell to his knees and screamed as the blood gushing from his socket covered his hands in scarlet. "Uncle Sasuke!" Boruto's worried voice could be heard as he attempted to assist Sasuke in sitting down on the ground. Ishiki noticed that Sasuke was still screaming as Boruto was helplessly staring around and burst out laughing in his final moments. But as soon as he felt anything from Sasuke's eye, the resonance of a dojutsu, his laughter was cut off. A dojutsu as powerful as his own, if not more so, he narrowed his eyes at Sasuke, but that was the last thing he could do because the strain of the fight quickly caused his frail mortal body to shatter. Both Sasuke and Boruto were unaware of the anomaly in Ishiki's final facial expressions, but the golden energy that was still present in Sasuke's eye socket quickly dissipated, revealing a brand new Dojutsu that Boruto had never seen before. Almost instantly afterward, Sasuke let out a sigh of relief and passed out, his chakra reserves depleted as he worked to mend his eyes. After returning home, they were able to determine the precise status of their town's now strongest ninja under the medical care of one Tsunade Senju. When Tsunade affirmed that Sasuke would fully recover, the entire village exhaled in relief. They had that much faith in Naruto Uzumaki, their 7th Hokage, and since Sasuke Uchiha was the only one who could regularly compete with Naruto in fight, it was a great comfort for Konoha and the other villages that he was in a combat-ready position. They had witnessed the fallout from Naruto and Sasuke's fight with the Otsutsukis, and they were fairly certain that Sasuke and, if they reached their full potential, Boruto and Kawaki would be the only ones capable of assisting the shinobi world the next time it occurred. All of the superiors, including Tsunade and Kakashi, blinked in shock when Sasuke awoke smiling of all things. Seeing something so strange, it was natural for Boruto and Kawaki to be openly staring at Sasuke as he sat up and began laughing like a deranged lunatic. Despite the fact that everyone in the room, who were all seasoned veterans of the war, could hear them clearly, Kawaki muttered to Sarada, "Has he gone crazy?" "No, I think he was already a little crazy before," Tsunade said in response to Kawaki's query. The Konoha higher-ups all nodded in accord at the same time. The only one with the guts to confront the obviously insane and extremely powerful Uchiha was Boruto. Uncle Sasuke, what's wrong?" "Huh?" Sasuke's body suddenly froze as he stopped laughing and turned to face Boruto. His hand and bangs had covered his left eye from the start, and even after reading Tsunade's report, they had concluded that, despite the fact that Sasuke's left eye had healed, it was just a regular eye. Instead of the all-powerful Rinnegan eye that Sasuke had before. Now, though, everybody in the room started to feel an unconscious pressure coming from Sasuke as he gazed at Boruto with his new red eye. Even Tsunade and Orochimaru, who are arguably the most experienced combatants, were forced to freeze for a moment before assuming a combat-ready stance. Everyone else was even worse. Only Boruto and Kawaki had been able to remain upright due to the strain of that one eye. "Tsunadeheim, what is this?" Orochimaru asked Tsunade in a tone that was so fake that nobody could be fooled because even a total novice could see the sweat and trembling palms on Orochimaru's face. Tsunade grinned and said. "Oh, what's this? Orochimaru, are you perhaps scared?" She was well aware of the lengthy and terrible past that existed between the snake Sannin and the strongest Uchiha in front of them. Sasuke stopped their byplay by closing his left eye and cutting off the chakra flow to it, which brought the room's pressure down to almost nothing. Now that they were at last free from the crippling pressure, all of the higher-ups in the room, including the council members and clan leaders, began to regain their breath. They all gazed in utter terror at the now standing Sasuke Uchiha. What has Naruto done? He can do all that without even moving. Battle-honed, fierce warriors who wouldn't even flinch at taking a life or even giving their own, had fallen unconscious with a mere flex of Sasuke's chakra. Tsunade mused as she peered to the corners of the room where the hidden ANBU had fallen, unconscious. The councilman rose slowly from the ground and gazed fearfully at the now combat-dressed Sasuke. With Naruto gone, they had no one to stop the Uchiha from doing anything he pleased. As Sasuke prepared to depart, Tsunade inquired, "Where do you think you are going?" Sasuke turned to face her, perplexed. Even the other individuals in the room were staring at Tsunade, perplexed. Sasuke's previous display of strength had made a lasting impression on everyone. Naruto possessed the same strength, but he was easily subdued because he was inexperienced in political matters. Sasuke, on the other hand, would likely kill them before even starting a conversation about something he did not believe in. Thus, they were understandably perplexed when Tsunade prevented Sasuke from leaving the village on his own will. Tsunade moved forward, past Boruto and Kawaki, while Sasuke remained mute. "Where do you think you are going? He trusted you with the village." Tsunade continued to look at Kawaki and Boru, including his family, "and I don't think he would have wanted you to be alone, especially at such a time. I will be leaving for some time. Do not worry, for I will return. I have some teammates to look for and dash," he said, looking at Boruto and Kawaki, before sharpening his gaze to Tsunade. "I have to train the next generation of shinobis as well," he added. After saying so, he extended his remaining right arm and stretched it towards his side. They all watched in anticipation as the overpowering chakra reappeared and a real portal appeared in front of Sasuke's arm, allowing him to exit the room. Tsunade finally found her voice and yelled at Sasuke as he exited the room they were in, the portal closing immediately behind him. "We are going to need to talk about your shiny new eye at some point." As the actual strongest shinobi of the elemental nations departed, the room erupted in murmurs of relief. "Well, little Boruto-kun, you better have some answers, because this has literally been the closest I have been to death in a long time, and I am not happy." Orochimaru growled at Boruto as he retreated from the visibly enraged Sannin. Tsunade motioned for everyone but herself, Orochimaru, and Shikamaru to leave the room. "Stop scaring him, but he is right, Boruto. We need answers, and we need them yesterday. Exactly what happened to your father out there? And what was up with Sasuke?" she asked Boruto. Shikamaru was staying with reluctance written all over his face, while everyone else left with obvious hesitation on their features. Troublesome. Father was in his weird mode where he easily overpowered Ishiki and even managed to severely injure him. Then, all of us went after Ishiki together and managed to wear his body down to such a level that his body simply stopped functioning. In the end, with Ishiki's demise certain, we were going towards Father as he suddenly collapsed without any warning. Fearing the worst, all of our attention was on Father when Ishiki, sniff Orochimaru irritably commanded. "Get on with it, brat, Orochimaru!" Ishiki attacked Father with something, It opened a portal behind him such that his body and everything around us was getting sucked in. At the last moment, Father's body flashed golden as he regained his sage mode, but something went wrong, or maybe it was what Father wanted, but at the last moment, Father sent something towards Uncle Sasuke's face. Tsunade and Orochimaru exchanged glances as they both realized that whatever Naruto had done at the time was the cause of Sasuke Uchiha's unusual presence. I thought it was an attack because Uncle Sasuke started screaming as soon as it hit him, but when the glow covering his face had gone out, Uncle Sasuke's eye that had been destroyed was now healed. After that, you know what happened. I see, you and Kawaki should go check on Hinata and Himawari. They have both been worried sick about you. Okay, The only people remaining in the room after Boruto and Kawaki left were Orochimaru, Tsunade, and Shikamaru, who was obviously thinking deeply. Tsunade inquired, "What do you think happened, Shikamaru?" Clearly it was due to whatever Naruto did that healed Sasuke's eyes and even managed to upgrade it. That last part is what's bugging me. I have seen Naruto use the Yang release to perform near miracles that even Tsunade-sama would not have been able to perform. Even assuming that Naruto could do the same for an eye as powerful as the Rinnegan, we all saw that Sasuke's eye was no longer the Rinnegan. It was something more, and that was certainly not in Naruto's list of abilities the last time we had talked. But then again, Naruto also did not possess this Baryon mode that he pulled out of nowhere for his last fight, dramatically increasing all his abilities, allowing him to overpower Ishiki easily, something that the Naruto we know would not have been able to do anyway. Orochimaru said. Deep in contemplation, Tsunade added, "Perhaps the arm I made for him using my grandfather's cells allowed him to do it?" Orochimaru said, "No, if that was true, I too would have received an entirely new power set." Oblivious to or refusing to pay attention to the now enraged Senju in the room. In another amusing turn of events, Naruto was working on a farm with only the inherent strength that came with being a Kage-level shinobi and an Uzumaki.